So now we're going to talk about our habits in relationship to spanda, in relationship to this word, which is actually, this is the origin of the word spandex. You know, that stretchy material. It's in a lot of yoga pants now, right? That spandex, it's like this elastic that allows us to expand and contract. So spandex, spanda. What we find is that there's, you know, we've talked about this in terms of North Pole, South Pole, in terms of how the body is aligned, and I do that picture of the body. Now I'm just going to tilt that axis right on its side. And we're going to look at these pairs of opposites. So on one side we have contraction, right? The spandex contracts. And on the other side, the spandex expands. On one side we may have hot, on the other side cold, on one side we may have wet, on the other side dry. And these are simply spectrums. They're like arrows that continue to each pole. And in Ayurveda we basically have 10 spandas. We have 10 opposites between expansion, contraction, heat, cold. They go into dry versus oily, subtle to gross. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I just want to give you a sense of where the language of Ayurveda arises and how this relates to spanda and how this relates to identity, evolution, and health. So that's where we're going. There's also static and mobile. So mobile is something that's moving. Static is something that's steady. Okay, so those are a few of the big ones, a few of the main ones. When we start to discover Svatantra and we start to see this freedom of the self, and many of us experience this in yoga. We do a yoga practice and we leave and we just feel like there's so much more space for me in here. And I'm so much more in here. Like I'm more expansive and free, and I'm also more grounded. So we see that the center opens, but also the outer, the physical tissue of the body gets more interconnected to the space element, to the breath. And in the experience, we get more grounded. So we're starting to see like, wow, there's a lot of the opposites that naturally happen in the experience of yoga. Yoga is based on spanda. Inhale, touch the sky. Exhale, touch the earth, right? Inhale, lift your chest. Exhale, step your left foot back. The basic sun salutation. We're stretching in one direction, moving in the other direction. We're bringing the outside to the inside to the outside. And all of these opposites start to be able to find their partner. We generate heat in the practice and we cool down with Shavasana. This is the nature of yoga. This nature of yoga is union. What are we uniting? We're starting to bring together all of these different ways that the body goes into, it starts to go to an extremity, right? The heavy people go to yoga, they start to feel light. The light people that go to yoga, they start to feel grounded. How's that happening? The stiff people get flexible, the flexible people get integrated. How's that happening? Same lesson, same classroom. We're starting to bring the different pairs of opposites into communication. And as a result, we start to become integrated. So what happens with disease or imbalance is we end up spending too much time in one or a pair or a whole grouping of these gunas. So these are all gunas. All guna means, it's a fancy word in Sanskrit, it just means characteristic, right? It's just, in a way it means like an adjective. So I'm just going to write characteristic, because you might not remember it as easy as remember that spanda is spandex. Characteristic. So these are just characteristics. Now, what you may see is that vata has characteristics, pitta has characteristics, and kapha has characteristics. Vatas, we know, are dry, subtle, mobile, and cold. Pittas are hot, oily. We could also have sharp and dull here. Chief characteristic of pitta is sharp, one of them. Dull. Dull is actually a characteristic of ether. And then if we talk about kapha, we know kapha is wet, it's heavy, it contracts, it's static, it's dull, it's also soft. So we also have soft and hard. And kapha is going to be more on the soft side. All right, so those are some of the gunas. What we start to see as we tap into Svatantriya is we start to see the times and the rhythms of nature and how we can live in alignment or we can live in out of alignment, and that it's ultimately our choice. We're free to choose how we age, we're free to choose how much pain and suffering, we're free to choose our addictions, we're free to choose how much joy and bliss, we're free to choose. That is the underlying teaching of Svatantriya, which is the, if you will, the highest attribute of yoga, is to wake up and be free. Be free of what? Be free of being sucked in by one of these opposites. So for instance, let's take someone who has a pitta imbalance and is a workaholic and goes and kind of disregards or doesn't attend to all of their relationships, including their relationship with their own body, including their right relationship with their own work, and they end up getting into a place where they're just driven, one thing after another thing after another thing, and they're out of balance because there's just too much sharp, there's not enough soft, there's not enough dull, there's too much direction, there's too much heat, which gives focus and intensity, and that is out of balance with the other side. And what this teaching is saying, well, they're actually free, they're free to choose that. But maybe that ends them up with an ulcer. Maybe that ends them up with a series of infections. Maybe they get Epstein-Barr virus, right? An autoimmune issue that's linked to Pitta in Ayurveda. So from the Ayurvedic perspective, we get a disease, a diagnosis, or a series of symptoms, and we trace our way back to the choices that ended up creating these gunas. And these gunas are found cellularly, but they're also found in the subtle and energetic body. So I hope that's helpful to start to understand how ultimately Ayurveda and living an awake life is about choice. You're choosing how you're designing your experience, and how you're designing your experience is largely through your habits. And next we're going to talk about some of the most basic habits to have, and then we'll go a little bit more into what is your constitution.